Hello and welcome to FinTech in Focus from the London Stock Exchange in partnership with Endeavour. I'm James Monroe, and in this series I'm talking to founders about their companies, how they started them, how they've grown them, and what they see in their future. So I'm delighted to be joined now by Ridwan Olalere, the CEO of LemFi, which, Ridwan, if I got it right, you described as a company which is building the financial services hub for immigrants globally. So perhaps start by telling us or explaining what you mean by that client base.
Thank you so much. UK happened to be a global hub for everyone, right? Also happened to be a Commonwealth leader. And so many people from these countries come here for a better life. They either come here for education or they come here as skilled workers to sort of join into the workforce here. And so as they sort of move countries, there happen to be an asymmetry in information. So I'll give you an example. A student moves to the UK and can get access to credit. A skilled worker who is upper middle class back home, whether it's India or China, moves to the UK, and they have to start from scratch to sort of build their credit score. We come in to bridge the gap. Before they sort of completely assimilate into the financial system in the first 2 years, they can get credit from LemFi, they can send money back home, they can still bank home and abroad. And so that's sort of the customer base that we target.
Was there any personal experience of how you have managed to develop LemFi?
Yes. We launched the company in 2020, and we initially started as a remittance company. And in 2021, when we chose UK as our headquarters, I moved to the UK. And I attempted to live here for about 2 years. And in the first 2 years that I tried to live here, I had so many issues. One was I couldn't open a bank account easily from the big banks, so I defaulted to Revolut. Or we can now understand why it's growing super fast. And the second was sort of I couldn't get rental approval from the landlords. And this was because I did not have a UK statement of account that was rich enough to sort of satisfy the landlord. And so even though I had statement of account back home and I submitted that, it was rejected multiple times. And I couldn't get credit cards. And so personally, I experienced the same issue. So did my wife, and my other friends also experienced the same issue. And so we sort of set to solve this problem at LemFi.
Am I right in thinking that something like 70% of your original earliest customers are still with LemFi?
Yes.
That's remarkable, particularly given the churn rate you'd expect from, for example, people who stop sending money back home. So what does that tell you about the relationship, the need for LemFi with your customers?
I think two things that sort of struck us as a company. One is that support back home, be it the Indian, be it the Chinese, be it the Africans, or even the Mexicans that come into the UK, want to keep very close ties back home, and they want to continue to support their family. And so remittance happen to be a high-frequency activity that happens 2 to 3 times a month. Every time they get a paycheck, about 20 to 30% of that income goes back home. And the second is sort of the trust that they have for LemFi, which is sort of that we've really focused as a team, because entrepreneurship or startup building is sort of a team sport, to focus on the needs of our customers and figure out a way to really solve these pain points for them. And as we continue to solve this pain point for them, they also, in return, stay loyal to the product.
And now you're operating across Africa, Asia, Latin America. And I imagine, that brings many different fraud priorities, payment rails, compliance requirements.
Yes.
What sort of challenge is that for LemFi?
Some of the biggest challenges, because you have to deal with many regulations and many sort of compliance processes. But as we do this, we figured out that we have to go local. In each market today, we have compliance officers, MLR officers, transaction monitoring team set up in each of the markets. And so these people sort of look at the local dynamics for fraud, for transaction monitoring, and sort of help us implement this things. But they're also very savvy people who come from previous payment companies in those regions.
And now in the UK, you've made perhaps your most ambitious bet to date with the purchase of Pillar. Tell us about that, why that, and what that says perhaps for your views on UK and London as an anchor, and perhaps expansion into Europe.
Pillar happened to be a company that got a license from the FCA for issuing consumer credit. And they did this, or they got the license about 2 to 3 years ago. And their theory was that there's a large underserved and credit invisible customer base, and they could solve this problem by changing the mechanism for underwriting. And that acquisition sort of helped us jumpstart our future. How do we go from remittance to underwriting the credit invisible customers? be it British or be it an immigrant from elsewhere who is now settling down in the UK.
Ridwan, it's been great to talk to you on behalf of the London Stock Exchange and Endeavour. Thank you so much for joining me. And to everyone watching, thank you as well. Goodbye.